us on the Parish Cane Break guest line. And, Steve, what jumps out at you as far as this matchup tomorrow morning between Leach and Montgomery?
Well, I would say the Tulsa secondary. I mean, these are guys that have given up 194 yards per game and 16th nationally, and I mean, that's what you look at. I mean, you look at its strength versus strength. It's the Mississippi State passing offense, which the Bulldogs are kind of a one-trick pony in many respects, up against the Tulsa defense that has been pretty salty, especially against the pass.
Yeah. Okay. So, and that defense has been opportune. I know they're missing their best player on defense, but they've been opportunistic as far as taking the ball away. When you think of freshmen that sometimes turn the ball over just because they're young and need to get stronger, Will Rogers, Marks, and Johnson got to hold on to the football tomorrow, Steve.
Yeah, they do. And, and you mentioned the Tulsa defense is one of those teams, too. They just kind of grind you out. That they want to shorten your possessions and limit your offensive ability to get on the field. And so if you make a big mistake, that could be a huge factor in the ball game. One of the things that kind of popped up for me as well is that, looking at kickoffs and that sort of stuff, Tulsa has only had 3 touchbacks the entire season. They've kicked the ball out of bounds the same number of times. So there is an opportunity for returns there. That could also be a situation where Tulsa's pretty good at covering the kick, and so they do more of that directional or that sky kick to kind of keep the ball inside the 20. But that's something I think that kind of jumps out, too, is special teams doesn't appear to be a real specialty for them.
Okay. Steve Robertson, genespage.com, 247 Sports. He's headed over to Fort Worth. So they'll be all over it as far as pregame, during the game, and postgame as far as Mississippi State and Tulsa. So, Steve, do you know how many practices they got in for the bowl game?
Mississippi State got in 4 additional practices. It's just one of those wild things. I think there's a little bit of football fatigue, too. As much as we all love bowl season, we didn't get those few weeks off between the conference championship games and the bowl games to kind of miss this thing again. There's a lot of people that are, even in the media, that aren't going to make the trip. And looking at the weather conditions, I'm glad I'm in the press box rather than in the stands.
Ah, okay. So you're looking at some bad weather tomorrow, possibly.
Well, it's going to be some cold, wet weather. So I would encourage Mississippi State folks to kind of dress as if you're going duck hunting. Wear some warm clothes underneath and put on a nice rain slicker and bring a cowbell and let's go get a W.
So does that favor Tulsa because Mississippi State throws it around like they do, or how do you see it?
Yeah, Tulsa's a little more balanced, obviously, but, ideally they'd love to be able to just kind of grind you out. I mean, they have a 3-prong running attack where you've got 3 running backs with right around 80 carries apiece. Leading rushers got under 500 yards, but, schematically what they'd like to do is spread you out a little bit with those bubbles and then run between the tackles. And I've always felt like wet weather favors the running team, and so that's something State's going to have to overcome.
Steve Robertson on the Out of Bounds show. Will Rogers tomorrow, what does he need to do early?
Well, you got to protect the football, and that's another thing, too, that's interesting is Tulsa has scored just 12 first-quarter points the entire year. So you've got a chance to get a lead and kind of build some things, but they're a team with really good halftime adjustments. They've been really strong in the second half, so you got to take advantage of that. While they're kind of probing offensively and figuring some things out, you got to go out there and put up a couple scores early in the ball game because they're going to make a run late. That's what's incredible about this Tulsa team. They're 6-2. Their 2 losses are to Oklahoma State. They gave up 13 points in the fourth quarter to lose that game. They had a fourth-quarter lead. And then in the AAC championship game, Cincinnati had to kick a last-second field goal. So Tulsa has been in every single game. This is a team that's not going to panic. This is a team that's not going to get out of their skis a little bit. They're going to understand it's a 60-minute ball game, but you've got to make them pay early. I think State has to win that first quarter and build an early lead.
What does Zach Arnett need to do and his defense against Tulsa tomorrow?
You got to stop the run. That's the thing. Zach Smith, the quarterback at Tulsa, completing 55.8% of his passes. He's only thrown for 1,600 yards. He's a former Baylor starter, so he does have some skill, but this year has not been the best one for him. And so the Bulldogs have got to make them one-dimensional. I think you've got to put the ball game in Zach Smith's lap There's two things that's going to have to happen in order for it to happen. Is you stop the run, and then you get a lead early to kind of make them a little bit one-dimensional. I think if you put the ball game in his hands, you got a good chance of winning.
Steve Robertson, genespage.com on the Parrish Cane Break guest line. Any key injuries or guys missing that you know of tomorrow?
No. And everybody's tight-lipped about all that stuff under the Leach administration. But the discussion yesterday is we're just sitting around waiting for the final round of testing for both teams. And, everybody gets a little bit anxious when they see these SEC bowl games get canceled. Then our Arkansas game happened, cancellation happened while the players are getting ready to get on the bus. And then so a lot of our fans were a little bit anxious saying, hey, what does this mean for us? But I was told yesterday State's good to go, well above the threshold, just waiting for that final round of testing. Team's going to fly at 11:30 today, so it appears everything's good to go.
All right, Zach Arnett, he's got a new deal, right? He signed that thing, and is that all wrapped up as far as his new contract?
Yeah, I mean, all that's done. Of course, that's not going to stop a blue blood program like, maybe a Florida or an Alabama for coming in and writing a big check. But I understand it would cost them over $2 million to buy Arnett out. We went through that before with Brian Baker. You remember Brian Baker signed a contract and left and went to Alabama. So it does kind of, prevent other schools from, maybe poaching your guy. But, if there's a program out there with a big enough bank account to write that kind of check, they can certainly do it. We don't anticipate that happening at this point. We do think LSU and others will go in a different direction.
Steve Robertson on the Out of Bounds show. Steve, let's pivot here to recruiting. What's the buzz as far as football recruiting right now for Leach and the crew?
Yeah, a lot of discussions about Ty Cooper. Now, what I'm hearing is he'll probably make a decision sometime around mid-January and go ahead and close things out. That appears to be trending well for Mississippi State, but a lot of it's going to depend on what if Ole Miss hires a defensive line coach that he's familiar with. I would say the Rebels' numbers are really, really tight there, and also with the loss of Deke Adams, it probably hurts their standing. But I think Ty is the best defensive lineman in this state, a guy that Mississippi State has courted for a long time. So hopefully things work out, but I do suspect that mid-January he'll make a decision to be a Bulldog.
And what about the Perkins kid, the DB?
Yeah, well, I understand from talking to some people connected to the Gulf Coast program is that contact between Mississippi State and Jadarius Perkins has essentially been non-existent since Christmas Day. I mean, that was all the discussion in the days leading up, is he was going to be a Bulldog, and then said he was going to be a Bulldog, and then didn't send paperwork in. And so I think both parties are probably headed in a different direction. But I do understand he hadn't signed with anybody just yet.
Interesting. Does that surprise you?
Yeah, because I thought he would probably have signed with Missouri or Oregon, but our Oregon folks are saying that they've confirmed that nothing's been received just yet. So they're all kind of waiting around like the rest of us. It's a very odd situation.
Who's recruiting him from Oregon? Is it Moorhead or someone else?
No, it's their DB coach. Joe is kind of assisting. He's not a lead recruiter in that respect. But, of course, Joe's a guy that loves recruiting, so he's in contact with those guys and sending out the hashtag, the SCO Ducks and all that sort of stuff. And so Joe's involved, but he's not, not the primary recruiter.
How many guys would they like to sign in February?
Well, 5 or 6, that's the thing you kind of look at with this new SEC rule about transfers. There's no longer – you can't do the immediate transfer within the conference, and that's a relatively new rule. It's just going into effect January 1. So you can enter the portal, but you can't have immediate eligibility if you want to transfer within the league. And so I think in that respect that gives Mississippi State, some protection, but also, too, there's some 4- and 5-star kids at Alabama and Georgia that might benefit from playing at Mississippi State that will not be allowed to do so anymore.
Interesting. So no more Scott Lashley type deal. Okay.
I think the grad transfer provision remains.
Oh, gotcha.
Really
Gotcha. Okay.
The underclassmen. Yeah.
That makes sense. Is Lashley still on the team, or is he gone?
He's still around, but we'll see how things progress once we get into the spring. He still has the year of eligibility he can use, since this year didn't matter. But, we'll see.
How heavy are they looking at JUCO for these? Out of the 5 or 6 spots, how many could be junior college players?
Maybe one. I think they're really going to go after C.J. Johnson and Ty Cooper and Deontay Anderson, and then probably, turn to the portal and you kind of see what's available from there. They need some difference makers at defensive back to really add some depth to the secondary.
And Deontay Anderson is a 4-star defensive end who will announce at an All-Star game on Saturday?
On January 2nd, the All-American game on NBC, the game's not going to be played. They're just going to have a two-hour presentation, and several guys are going to announce their decisions. And we expect him to be a Bulldog when it's all said and done.
Okay. What do you know about him, Steve?
Just a long, lean guy from Fort Meade, Florida. That he's got a very impressive offer sheet, but he's a little bit undersized. He's a guy that's got to have a year or two in the weight room, but explosive first step, real long, rangy, edge rusher type guy. I mean, I'm not going to say that he's the same caliber of player of Montez Sweat, but that same type of body type. That's what people should expect.
Okay. Out of bounds, 105.9 The Zone, ESPN. We're visiting with Steve Robertson, jeanspage.com. Boneyard podcast. When was the last one that you uploaded?
This morning. Yeah, I did it I got done around midnight and uploaded it and published it this morning and got into bed and got a few hours sleep, and now we're on the road to Texas.
All right. So was it MSU and Tulsa and recruiting, or what else was in there?
Yeah, it's definitely a ball preview and kind of an update on some recruiting stuff. But yeah, I mean, right now, it's game day eve, and it's crazy to think that we're here. I mean, there was some people that told us, back in June that we would never reach this point, but Mississippi State ends up playing every game on the schedule, and now in a bowl game, and getting ready to play number 11. And then I think people will take a bit of a sigh of relief and kind of prepare for off-season conditioning, and that's what this program needs, is a good off-season where they can have access to each other and get out there and really kind of build some chemistry.
Don't you feel like their team is in a much better spot today than it was 3 months ago, 2.5 months ago?
And that's what's crazy. And I asked Austin Williams about that earlier. I mean, you look around the huddle against LSU and look around the huddle against Missouri, it's a different bunch of guys, and so I think they found a place to kind of find some solid footing and begin to move forward. But, yeah, I mean, it's been a tumultuous year in many respects. You've had some players you counted on that didn't pan out, and some others that left the team. And so, but still they found a way to find some juice down the stretch and won a couple ball games.
Yeah, I mean, Costello, Lashley, Shivers.
Colin Hill.
Yeah.
Shavers.
Sorry. That's what I meant. Incredible what all played out. Any discussion, I know this will shake out over the next few weeks, but what are you hearing on maybe seniors coming back for MSU?
There's going to be a handful of them. That's the thing that we're all kind of figuring out now is, what's next? What's next for Mississippi State? And there's some guys out there that have some NFL aspirations, but I don't know if they have an NFL quality resume and they could benefit from another year. So those are the things you begin to look at with all this is, who's going to be available and who has a realistic chance to play and be on the college level.
Interesting. So, but you wouldn't be surprised if an offensive lineman or two decided to come back, right?
Oh, not in the least. I think there's a good chance Darian Parker comes back and maybe Greg Allen. We'll see.
All right, Spivey, I know he's had 2 bad drops. I think the young man can be a really, really good football player. Do you think that, and do you think the staff will continue to give him opportunities even into next year?
Yeah, I do. And it's like you said, I mean, this is the first substantial playing time he's had on the college level. He has had a couple of big drops, and I think 2 of them have happened on the exact same play. I mean, I think it's just a matter of him getting comfortable out there. But to be fair, we had a couple of big drops last year against Auburn, and so those are the things you begin to kind of work through is, what's his availability going to be and what's his skill set look like.
Mm-hmm. All right, we'll leave it there. Steve Robertson, jeanspage.com. He just uploaded the Boneyard podcast on the bowl preview and some recruiting. Steve, we'll talk next week. Safe travels to Fort Worth. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Take care.
So he's on his way to Fort Worth, Texas, and out there near where Blake's team has their facility and all that kind of stuff.
Team.
And that would be the Dallas Cowboys with the big star on their helmet. Steve Robertson joined us on the Parish Canebrake Brewing guest line. If you haven't tried it yet, we highly recommend. Ghost in the Machine is also a really good beer. Their portfolio is really, really good. Parish Brewing is out of the state of Louisiana. The Cane Break is real easy drinking wheat ale. The Ghost in the Machine will grab you a little bit, but it's a delicious beer too. So check out Parish Brewing, and Parish Cane Break beer. Out of Bounds, 105.9 The Zone, ESPN. We're going to have, all right, we still have 2 more guests today.
That's right.
Isn't that crazy? Our guest, right?
You said you wanted to know about Tulsa.
I did.
So I said, let's find out about Tulsa.
Well, let me get to what I'm supposed to be doing here. So we have, where is this? I have something. What is Kelly's name?
Kelly Hines.
Yeah, Kelly Hines with Tulsa World.
Tulsa World. She's been there since 2012, 8 years.
Wow, so she does know what's going on with the Golden Hurricanes.
That's right.
She'll give us a little more information on the Golden Hurricanes out of Oklahoma. And then David Johnson, Ole Miss insider, will weigh in on Ole Miss and Indiana in the Outback Bowl in Tampa, Florida. That's a great bowl.
Great place.
It's a great place. It's a great bowl. It's an awesome stadium. Everything about that is fun. Downtown Tampa is cool. I'm not saying I'd want to live there, but for a weekend it's fun. And the beach is awesome out there in the Clearwater area. And that's where we stayed a couple of years ago when Joe Moorhead flexed his muscles offensively against Iowa in the Outback Bowl. But we had an absolute blast. And I took my son to Hooters, which I think that may have been the original Hooters. I don't know if I put that together or not, but my wife and daughter were laying out on the beach. It was 80 degrees that day and beautiful. There was not a cloud in the sky. The beach was perfect. And, the water was great. We had this area. There weren't a lot of people there. We stayed at a really cool place. I think there's a Hyatt or something on the beach. I don't know.
Y'all were out on the island.
Yeah, we were right on the beach. You could see it from our hotel.
I was on the mainland.
Okay, yeah, you were downtown having fun.
Where the peasants live.
Yeah, no.
No,
there's a cool spot.
We were in a cool place. Downtown was ball. I've never been to a club that was 5 stories. It was amazing.
Nick Fulton with USA Pawn gave me a super hard time about not driving into town that night for New Year's Eve. Here was the problem.
Sick.
The traffic.
It was slammed.
You couldn't move. And once we got out, you have to go through Tampa to get to Clearwater.
Correct.
And you know how impatient I am anyway.
No.
And we drove instead of flew, which we used up because we were going to Disney World for a few days.
And you're not a New Year's crowd person.
I'm not. I don't care anything about that. That ended when I was like 23. Yeah. So when Nick is giving me all kinds of grief. Get in an Uber, come in, but it was going to take to get a few miles. It was going to take 45 minutes to an hour.
It's not worth it.
And so we ended up finding this cool Italian place out on that Island Beach deal, and had an absolute blast. But my son loves wings, and so there was a Hooters right across the street from our hotel, and so we dove in there. Was that the next day?
I can't remember.
I can't either.
I will say this.
Oh, well.
I did watch someone propose to their girlfriend outside of the club at 2 a.m. in the middle of the street. It was hilarious.
No, you didn't.
Yeah, true story.
Was he sober?
Oh, God, no. All right, here.
Did he? I wonder if he had that recollection the next day.
No,
okay.
I think it was on purpose. So how about this? I want to segue real quick because we've talked a lot about
Hooters?
Yeah. See you later. We've talked a lot about people making money in sports, right? College athletes. And the NAIA began allowing athletes to profit off their name, image, likeness in October, okay? So Aquinas College, which is in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Okay.
Aquinas College volleyball player Chloe Mitchell has now become one of the first collegiate athletes to monetize their brand using social media. Mitchell has 2.6 million followers on TikTok, 5,500 on YouTube, and 26,000 on Instagram, and is currently making between $15,000 to $20,000 annually in her original endorsement deals. That's a women's volleyball player from Aquinas College.
That is awesome.
That's fantastic because she has a social media brand and following. She plays volleyball, but she has a deal. One of her biggest deals right now is with Bloodline Golf and Delta Putt, which are some, I guess, Michigan golf company. I don't know either of those golf companies. Maybe our golf listeners do.
So It's finally happening.
She is a women's volleyball player at Aquinas College, which none of you knew where that was or what it is, but she is a nobody in the sports world, quote unquote. Yet because of her ability to brand herself on social media, she's making about $20,000 annually just to start.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
I love it.
That's what
That's capitalism.
That's what NIL was about. Not about Joe Bob, who owns Toyota Tuscaloosa,
right,
paying $15. That's not what this was about.
Right.
This is what this was about.
Right. It's about monetizing
your value,
and especially YouTube and TikTok.
Yes.
I can't imagine, what someone like Jake Mangum would have been able to do today compared to
his war stick deal that he has now. He
Yeah.
could have been doing it in Mississippi State. How many war stick bats would be throughout Mississippi right now if Jake Mangum
Thousands.
had been able to brand them?
Every 7 to 14-year-old
would have one or 5
watched that played baseball. Every single one of them, whether they were a Mississippi State family or not, they watched him play.
Yeah.
Will Rogers and Matt Corral could both build YouTube followings and TikTok followings and make, like you said, 15, 20, 25, whatever that number is, $1,000
Incredible.
Annually.
Incredible.
I love it.
I mean, and this is, again, you could be like, oh, well, $20,000, what would Tua, it doesn't matter what Tua, if I made $20,000 in college for my TikTok or my social media, I'd be through the roof.
Yeah.
That's incredible money.
And that's what should happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
And should have happened for years. It's amazing. We're okay with tennis, golf, Olympic sports, Olympians, and so on making money at
the
18.
engineer,
but God
the lawyer,
forbid a football player or basketball or baseball.
Yep.
So, yeah. But can you imagine Marshall Henderson on TikTok?
Oh, God. Marshall Henderson would have made as much money as he wanted to branding himself.
Yeah.
That type of
Marshall
player,
Henderson on TikTok and YouTube.
Fred Smoot would have been able to make as much money in the NFL he would have made off the NFL.
Smooth.
On social media. Yeah. Wow. He was just a generation too early, I guess.
Wow.
Special K on the Mississippi Ag text line says the probability of that couple from Tampa being married is the same as the ones who proposed at the steakhouse you were talking about.
That's pretty good. We had a fun discussion yesterday on Western Sizzlin' and Steak and Ale. And some people threw out some other ones. You and I threw out Swenson's.
That's right. After the show, but yeah, Swenson's was a staple of my childhood.
Thought that was fancy.
Yeah. What about Red Hot?
In 1987.
What about Red Hot and Blue?
Oh, my God.
I don't know if it was ever considered fancy, but that place used to pop.
But it had a super cool, in 1992, the nightlife, it had a super cool vibe.
Yeah, I remember going there as a kid with my parents,
Red Hot and Blue was one of the coolest, very iconic place in Jackson. Had a lot of fun nights there in college. Man, love to see some kind of Red Hot and Blue pop back up. That'd be awesome. We're live in the Bank Plus studio. It's National Bacon Day. Third hour coming up.